school, it's a CIP funded project, and it's for the architect selection. What we're really looking at is if we go with Morrisburg at Monroe High School, the timing is about the same. And the locations are so close that we're recommending that we go with Morrisburg for the Monroe Middle School project.
Can they handle all that? The
Yes.
transportation facility, the high school, and the middle school?
So the transportation facility is 95% complete.
Okay.
That one's just
yeah.
really waiting,
Okay.
for, we
And
we
this
had a
is
meeting
just
on that yesterday.
The 1.9 million that we slated for Monroe Middle. I know that Monroe Middle had some other projects in the CIP for 17-18. We're not looking at those right now, or we are?
So we are wanting to combine line items from CIP where it makes sense, and it goes into construction sequencing. What we don't want to do is to renovate classrooms, and then the following year come in and to include replacing ceilings and lighting, and then the following year come in and take out the ceilings and lighting
Right.
and put in new ductwork. So we're trying to sequence that work. We will come back to you if there's any change or proposed change to years of funding for anything like that.
And clearly this work, some of this work can't be done while school's in session. So this is for, what's the timeline? Are we looking at at the December break? Are we looking at spring break? Are we looking at next summer?
So certainly it's next summer. But that's also one of the things we have to meet with the architect, and we have to try to determine how much work can be done in that time frame, and whether this needs to be multiple phases, or whether we're just going to. So defining that project is an effort that needs to happen with the architects.
And then my last question, and I'll turn it over. Are we going to start seeing more stuff like this for the other projects on the CIP that rise to the level of needing architects and things like that, so that stuff is starting to line up for next summer?
So we had a pretty involved meeting with staff that lasted in pretty much an entire day, where we were going through all the projects with the various teams, trying to determine what made sense, what didn't make sense. I was happy to see that as we went through that process that we didn't have as many of these type issues as we could have. So that was good. Monroe Middle School looked like it is most involved. So I think probably Monroe Middle School was I don't want to say the worst case, just the most.
It had involved. The most, right?
It had the most work, and it was every single year for 5 years we were going to be in there, renovating and disrupting. So we're trying to see how we can minimize that. It's more cost effective. The school certainly is going to appreciate it, and that's really where we want.
Right. Well, that's why when we talk about what we're doing for the Monroe schools and the low performing schools, and we talk about the money that we're putting into the schools, we're also talking about the capital renovations that we're making to these schools. And if you add up all the schools and the stuff that we approved for this year's budget, it's about $4 million in renovations at just those 6 or 7, whatever, 6 schools. So it's a lot going on. So that's great. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is the effort. We'll come back to you when we have any proposed changes.
Great.
Do we need a motion on that?
We need a motion to recommend to the board to enter into fee negotiations with Morrisburg on the Monroe Middle School projects.
So moved.
Second. Those in favor?
All right.
Awesome. CTE.
The committee had asked for CTE updates. Or a CT update. So CATA, there are 2 projects right now. It's CATA Recording Art Studio and the Forest Hills Auto Body Classroom. Data that we've provided in here was the contract amount, $56,284, awarded to Kodiak Constructors for CATA. The architect is DH&A Architecture. There was asbestos involved in that project that has been abated, and that is completed. The revised substantial completion date on that project is September 13th. This project did not go to the facilities committee. It's under $100,000. So at $56,000, that project was was awarded.
And I'm okay that it doesn't come to the committee for approval, but if there's capital projects going on in the schools around this, around the county, I think we just would like to be made aware of it. It's another like an FYI thing. FYI, we're redoing this, because you hear from parents or teachers or whoever in the county and you're like, huh? I don't see that on my CI, but right. Right, it's not on my sheet. So I do really appreciate this. And I know that curriculum has asked for the budget and stuff that CTE has. So these are the only ones for this year, but I don't know what their plans are for future years too, and how the money comes in and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, and I did talk with Robert Filter, and he had explained that he was going to be doing a presentation to the other committee.
Okay,
So
awesome.
I
I assume you still oversee, your department still oversees these projects?
It's
or
a joint effort.
It's a joint effort, okay.
For what it's worth, I will say that on the first day of school 2 days ago, I was at Forest Hills, and Dr. Plew and I walked down to the area where the new construction is happening. I met the general contractor, and they are scheduled to be in that facility by November 1. That is their timeline, and it is moving pretty quickly, and there is currently a wait list for those classes. And from what I could tell, the staff, the kids are really excited about that facility. So
I did have a question about the Music Production Academy. I understand there was some asbestos remediation involved.
You said music production, is that the recording arts studio?
It's on
Okay.
there, the ACBM abatement.
Yes.
Was that paid for with CTE funds too?
So, and that's a nice discussion. Currently, the way that was paid for was out of school funds. And that is a discussion that we're having with CTE. And they're in agreement on how this can be resolved. But we're waiting for the Forest Hills project to complete. The expectation, the hope is that funds that are not used at Forest Hills can possibly be used at CATA to reimburse the school. That's
I
the
think
goal
that's
there.
all the more reason
I
why,
was just gonna
even
say
under
that.
$100,000, any construction projects should come through facilities, because we're liable to open up a can of worms that start coming out of the can.
And I would hate for the school to use its discretionary funds for something like that. I would like to be aware of it, and maybe in our future capital budgets, we need to build some contingencies in for things like this. But if we're not aware of them,
Right.
it's impossible to do that.
Well, I would say, I mean, this is specific to CTE. So is that the umbrella, that you're looking at?
But if CTE doesn't have those contingency funds, somebody in our budget has to have them.
Right.
And I don't know if it's facilities or CTE or whatever, but I don't think that using their discretionary funds at the school level is
And we
is a-
certainly don't disagree.
I know you do not.
Yeah, we're certainly on board with trying to recoup the school's money.
I think, Dave, what I hear the committee saying is even items under 100,000, whether it's CTE or not CTE, an FYI memo that explains kind of the status of those
Okay.
projects, where they are, what the funding source is, would be appreciated as an FYI.
Sure. And happy to say that that's going to be a long list. So.
And Dave, just to reiterate what's already been said, from a board perspective, we are the liaison to the community and the parents and the students. A lot of times we're going to be their first contact that they pick up, and I voted for you, and so they're going to want to know what's going on at their school. And the purpose of having four board members on this facilities committee is to know and understand what's going on, in all facilities, whether it's CIP or a bond project or CTE. So sometimes it's going to be informational only, just so that we have the knowledge to be able to communicate it, to the public and to other board members that aren't on the facilities committee. So sometimes it's going to be informational, and sometimes, there's going to be things that we need to approve. So what you've shown us today is perfect.
Okay.
Great information.
Good.
I'd like to add that Dave and I met with the principal over at CATA, and we want a larger role, more involvement on our end And so we will be pursuing that in all projects as we move forward.
The next item is energy consultant. We're interested in working with an energy consultant to help us cut our utility expenses. We have 5.7 million square feet of building, and we have close to $10 million a year in utility costs. It's $9,899,397 was last year's 2015, 2016 utility expenses. That's counting water and sewer. That's counting electrical. That's counting gas, natural gas, and propane. That's a pretty, what we think is a higher than we should be square foot cost. It's about, if you do that math, it's $1.72 a square foot. We would like to try to reduce that. We think that we should be able to get perhaps 10%, would be a goal, which is close to about $1 million a year. That would be a good goal. The way that we want to do that, certainly behavior modification is a big way of attaining that. That's not something that costs, money. But what we want to do, with behavior modification is an energy policy, that would need to be developed. But we think a consultant can help us get there. And what we want to do is to pursue that road, go down that road, put together an RFQ, receive responses, announce that, receive responses, evaluate that, and propose a consultant to the board.
Mr. Burnett, could we first go to the energy providers that sell us, because I know Duke Power will come out and do the service free.
So this is a little bit different. Certainly, we have the relationships with the providers, and we receive the communication from, in this case, Duke Energy, and we have multiple energy providers. So Duke doesn't cover the entire school system, and that goes so far. But really, this week is a great week. Last week was a great week for examples of where it's really difficult to manage the energy usage. We've had schools say, I really would like my energy, I'd like my air conditioning on till 10 o'clock at night every day. And we're saying, what do you mean every day? Is that Monday through Sunday? Is that Monday through Friday? Why does it have to be on until 10 o'clock at night? Are you actually working the entire facility at 10 o'clock at night? It costs a lot of money. Really, the way we need to be operating is we need to have operating occupied temperature standards and unoccupied. We need to change those set points, and we need to decide on what the temperature is going to be so that we can manage that and have the backing of the school board and the administration. You always have, with thousands of employees, not everyone is going to be comfortable. One person in one room is going to be cold. The same person, another person in the same room is going to be hot. We might get the calls saying, make it colder and make it hotter. So if we're within a standard set of temperatures, 70 degrees to 74 degrees, if we're within that, we'd like to just not touch it. Just leave it alone. That's requiring time and effort on our part to make those adjustments, and we're making a lot of adjustments, and we really need to try to calm down on that. So that's kind of the issues that we're facing. Our HVAC folks are really in a bad position where they know the right thing to do is to let that facility coast. In many cases, we can turn off the energy, the air conditioning at 6 o'clock in the evening, and it'll coast. But we will get those calls that say, turn on the air conditioning.
I'd like to add that both Dave and I have a good deal of experience with participating in programs like this. And where I think the district that I was in before, we were very, very successful. And Dave, you were maybe to a much lesser degree. And in our case, it was because we had the input from the board in helping us set the guidelines. and tell us, this is what we're going to do. Now, I'd also like to add, this isn't about somebody not being comfortable. As a direct result of the program that we implemented, one of the benefits that no one thought about or didn't realize was that when somebody was too hot or too cold, it meant that we had a problem with equipment. We had gotten it to the point where when something was wrong, it wasn't because we had messed up, it was because something was broken. And we saved a lot of money. And this isn't smoke and mirrors. This is hard money. But it is an effort on the part of the board, and it starts with you all in helping set and helping us maintain the policy. But again, in our experience, it has proved to be a worthwhile endeavor.
And I'd like to mention, so my past experience was less successful. It was still successful, but less successful than Mark's. And the reason for why it wasn't as successful really goes back to the energy policy and the backing, of the energy policy. That backing, that support eroded. And so then our standards eroded. And then we started falling back to, running the air conditioning longer, changing the set points, so that it was colder in the facility for air conditioning cases. So that was my experience with that. It was successful, but not as successful as it could have been.
Is it safe to assume that you've been with Union County Public Schools now for a few months, a couple of months? Is this something that you recognized as a potential savings, and that's why you're bringing it to us today, because you do see inefficiencies in Union County Public Schools?
I'd like to.
We toured schools, a couple schools
Right.
this summer, and they were freezing.
And
there's
so-
no kids in the building.
And I've been in a couple with the state superintendent and Dr. Houlihan, and one side of the hall felt very comfortable, but the other side of the hall near the courtyards, it was like walking into a cloud.
Well, but something like that could be a balancing issue, or it could be an equipment issue. But you make a great point, because the goal is to have everybody where we need to have them. Before I came here doing research on UCPS, you all didn't have anything in place, and we were successful. We had a lot of fun with it. It was a great program, and so I'm anxious to do this and get going on it.
So I think this is not an action item today. Is that correct?
What we want to do is we want to pursue advertising and developing an RFQ.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't think the committee needs to take action today on this. We'll come back to you after the RFQ comes in for
think it's a
evaluation
great
and give
idea,
you a
though.
recommendation.
But are you suggesting that, do we need to make the recommendation to send this to the policy committee?
Well, yeah, that would be later. Yeah, that would be much later.
I would like to ask Mr. Burnett, I know back in the spring, we were told about the fluorescent lighting being switched to LED lighting at Walter Bickett.
Do you want to report or something to see if we can tell the difference?
Well, what it was in the new part, I believe a company installed the lighting free just for the tax credits. And then facilities purchased LED lighting for the rest of the school. But anyway, there's still tax credits that some companies can utilize. And we have a lot of fluorescent fixtures. And if there's still a free offer out there, I don't understand why we're not grabbing that up. I would like to ask you to come back to the next facilities meeting. And Mr. McManus knows what I'm talking about. I believe he negotiated or worked with the people that put in the last free lighting we got. That's almost a no-brainer.
Okay, well, we'll try to come back with a status report.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Old Fairview appraisal. Mr. Burnett.
Okay, so the Board of Education voted to surplus the old Fairview property May 2nd. Subsequently, the county had asked for an appraisal on that. We have received the appraisal. The appraised value is $521,000. That is excluding the gym because the gymnasium is going to be torn down. And so just for comparison purposes, if you've probably looked, the tax value shows, 1.5 million, but the appraised value is $521,000.
Okay. Two things for me. The town of Fairview is the only occupant currently, and there's no current lease.
That's correct.
So we need to get that fixed.
So we can pursue a lease if you wish, or do we hold off on that if there's going to be a transfer of property? Or
I don't know. Do we get a short term? I mean, we can't. I guess we need to talk about this in closed session. I'll wait for that discussion in closed session. The second question is, the county, it says the county's requested additional information on the property before exercising their right. So I guess in the future, we need to get the appraisal first before we go to the county for their right of first refusal. But what other additional information is the county waiting for from us? Anything? Does anyone know?
I believe that's it.
That's it. Okay, good. That's what I needed to know. Okay. So then you'll send the appraisal to the county at this point. We'll go in front of them asking for their right of first refusal, and then we can move forward with the rest of it. Okay. Anyone else?
So Dave, I know their next meeting is on Tuesday of next week. And so whatever documentation we can get to them today to see if we can get this on their agenda. If not, it'll have to be 2 weeks after.
Okay. Thanks. So then we have the Student Realignment Committee item.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions on the Old Fairview? We're good with that? Okay. The next thing we have is the student realignment. The Citizens Advisory Committee had asked us to take up discussions about core, how that affects classroom capacity, if it affects classroom capacity at all. Because as everybody may remember, as a board, we determined the capacities of the school by Proper's classroom capacity. So that's something that is being investigated right now by facilities, and they'll come back to us on it. We don't have any answers as of right now. There's just a couple schools that they're taking a look at, a couple schools that they've already taken a look at, but that's kind of where we are with that, with the core discussion. But as for right now, the Citizens Advisory Committee has the classroom capacities from Cropper, and we're going to go with that. The other thing they asked us to look into is grandfathering, and after discussion with our council and other things, that's something that's usually determined closer to the vote on a realignment, not something that we can make a decision on right now, but we're going to start having conversations around it. That's probably more of a policy committee discussion than it is a facilities committee discussion, but I just wanted to address those two questions. Okay, and then the other thing on the Citizens Realignment Committee would be the comment page. Right now, there's a realignment email address that the citizens can write into, and in some cases receive responses from Matt Cropper, who's managing the email account. And then those emails are uploaded to our website under the tab on the right under Student Realignment Citizens Advisory Committee. And we had talked about kind of getting a comment page, whether it's a Google page or another company type of thing, and I just kind of wanted to get a quick update on that.
We have received information from K-12 Insight on that. We are working to get things processed on our end, and once that is done, the company has had a little bit of backtracking just with they're busy right now with other districts. So we're working. It should take at least no longer than 2.5 weeks to get up and going. And so as soon as we're done with information on our end, we'll be ready and good to go.
So that's 2.5 weeks from once we've
processed everything on our end with K-12 Insight.
Okay. And I guess the question is, would this be something that Matt Cropper would be able to access in order to respond to citizens?
That is correct.
Okay,
yes.
So that's one question. And the second one is, are we good with keeping going with the emails, or is there some other in the meantime, because it could be 3 weeks, 4 weeks maybe before we're there, is there a Google page or a Google Doc that we could use instead or something? Or is that just too much work knowing that this is coming?
I would prefer to wait until we have K-12 Insight in place. The emails seem to be working. I've not heard any feedback
The
from the
emails are
community that are
working,
not
right.
working. I think we're being very transparent and posting the information. So I would rather move from that and to take K-12 Insight rather than have a transition.
I think we're being completely transparent and the emails are up there. I think though that once we get this up and running, things will be by category. People can say,
Yes.
oh, before I send an email about this, let me check to see if anyone else has asked the same question or a similar question, or have people from my subdivision sent emails and they'll be able to go to that. Okay, good.
And I would even suggest that maybe even though when we get K-12 Insight up, it may be that we keep the emails that come in just as documentation from what the community is sending in.
I agree with that.
I'll just tell you all for what it's worth. I've had double-digit parents that have expressed appreciation on the communication aspect of this, and comments of folks that have been here 5, 6 years ago when realignment happened and versus now, and that they've said to me it's like night and day. And that because of the board's commitment to transparency and what we're doing with communication is just really making a big difference for the community members. So
I've heard it very similar, that people are very happy with the transparency, but that the emails are sometimes hard to go through because people are paying attention, which is awesome. And I think the great thing is that more options come out, they're able to see some of the impact on the options of their comments in the emails. So
Because I had an opportunity to work with you and your department through the bond campaign, we had a frequently asked questions type kind of scenario. And I was thinking maybe for this reliant, because we tend to get the same questions through email. And so sometimes I feel like I'm, sending out the same answer. When we convert over to the K-12 program, can we have a frequently asked questions? Because a lot of the parents, they're asking the same question and we're just kind of, so could we?
That is the intent of it, that it gives the community questions that they know everyone is asking. So it will have those responses that the team has developed and it'll be right there available for them. It may not be called frequently asked questions, but it'll have questions like, what about this or what about that? And
I think that was very helpful when we were going through the bond campaign, because people could go right to the site and go, oh, well, that was my question.
Right.
So I think that would be great.
And many, as I looked through the emails as well, and many of the questions are very similar. And so I think a lot of people are just wanting to know those generic type answers.
Well, good. I'm glad that we're progressing, and hopefully that the first public input session is on the 19th. So hopefully
We hope so.
it will be a go by then, so that will be up after that.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions on any of the student realignment? Okay. Roofing consultant update.
Last week, we met with Terracon to develop and try to define what the scope is going to be, look at the format for the reporting, and get their feedback. They're going to be, they have taken our information, our suggestions, the things that we want to see. They're going back. They are going to be providing the proposal. We do expect to provide discuss the proposal at the next facilities committee meeting. So that's the timetable that we're on for that. We are trying to also retrieve as much electronic design information from past projects as we can. The more we can retrieve, we expect that would help reduce the fee for the survey. Don't know the success yet on that. We're still working on that. But the expectation is that next month's facilities committee meeting, we will bring you the proposal.
Mr. Burnett, how are our roofs holding up?
I actually asked that question yesterday. The answer is two thumbs up. We're in good shape.
It's a miracle, isn't it?
Yeah.
As of today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, construction update. I thank you for this. This is exactly what we were looking for on the big projects, to get an update.
Excellent.
I have 2 questions.
Sure.
Well, I was going to ask Ms. Heindel, instead of going line by line by line, can we just say, is there any questions that you
Yeah.
have about a specific?
I just jumped into that. The fire lane at Walter Bickett that
Right.
needed to go there is done now?
Yes.
I went by, saw it. I was a little, I didn't understand it was going to be just rock, gravel. And it looked like to me, it didn't go all the way around the building. It stops out there at a equipment shed.
So typically, and David can chime in, but we'll be working with the fire marshal and really getting that fire lane as what they need. Doesn't always have to be a continuous loop around the building, as long as they can cover everything that they need to cover with the fire truck. But David, if I
Well, you
misspoke.
also have a change in elevation of topography there, and that is what they approved to let us have that. And that little stub there you see is a turnaround they have for the fire truck. So they have accepted that. And, but one of the challenges we had was if you kept going around there between the property line and the building face, you got a sort of a ravine there, somewhat, that they wouldn't be able to go down even if they took the truck. It'd be very difficult. Plus, we also have the chiller, big chiller pad in there, which was constructed. So they can come on both sides of the building if they have to. There's a level side on the other side that they can easily traverse the parking lot. Or they can go back on that crushed stone that was put out as per their requirement of the building permit.
So the coverage is what is the requirement. And so we've provided the coverage, the area to be covered.
Thank you.
Okay, the other question I had was on the Monroe High School STEM classroom. Was that in this year's CIP?
It should have said Monroe Middle School. It says Monroe
So
High
then all
School.
my questions are done with that one.
So I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. I'm like, wow, there's one at the high school. I don't remember that. Okay, great.
One thing that didn't show on here is the New Salem project. So that is underway. It's 50% complete. And the two AX Max units, I just call them package units, they've been received and they're in place. The lagoon is underway and the liner installation is underway.
Sun Valley Middle School's chiller. In, not in? Anyone?
Danny?
Sun Valley Middle School's chiller.
From last year. It's fixed. Oh,
The new chiller.
somebody middle school's chiller. I'm sorry, you got me at a loss. It's been done.
No,
You talking
Sun
about
Valley
Shiloh?
Middle.
No.
That was the one that was.
That we moved all the money out of.
Yeah.
We approved it at like 690 at one of the meetings for a new chiller there. And it's the one we thought that the project was going to be much bigger than it was, and then it was narrowed down.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Somebody middle school unit ventilator replacement.
Oh, sorry. I'm not speaking facility speak.
No, I thought I lost the chiller. Somebody.
Yeah, it would be good if, yeah, I came up here. Sorry, wrong words.
So the Sun Valley Middle School project is the unit ventilator and the fresh air replacement. The contract has been finalized, has been let. The contractor ordered unit ventilators. Unfortunately, they ordered unit ventilators for all, and I'll probably mess this up, but they ordered them all for rear fresh air, and we have some that have rear fresh air and top fresh air. So they had to go back, look at a count, send back what they sent, what they ordered was wrong, and so they're working on it. They did replace 5 units in the problematic classrooms that we had, and then they tried to replace the units in the gym, but were unsuccessful with that. But we will be working through breaks, and then they have the contract goes through the end of next summer. So we're still on track for that to be finished. That was just a little hiccup from the contractor.
That's okay. Great. Thank you for that update.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have any questions on the construction update? Okay, surplus equipment.
So we have a list, 3 lists actually, 10 cars from driver's ed, and then we have some school nutrition equipment, braising pan, milk box, and steamers, and then we have some miscellaneous facilities equipment.
Anyone have any questions?
I was curious, the 10 driver's ed cars, were any of those replaced with new vehicles, or did we just have too many? And were those replaced because of mileage? They had exceeded a certain mileage limit. Can you tell us more about that?
I can tell you a limited amount. Certainly, and you'll see on there, the vehicles are 12 to 17 years old.
Mhm.
And they're between 90,000 and 143,000 miles. But I don't know whether they've been replaced, and I don't know whether there was any specific issues with the vehicles. We can certainly check.
I mean, because to release 10 vehicles from our school system seems like a big number to me. When you have so many high schools, run these. So I was just curious, are we short vehicles, or do we have enough, or do we have too many?
Okay.
Dave, I believe, and Miss Merrill, I believe I can answer that, because when I was reading through the advanced paperwork we're sent, Dr. Jones,
He's not here.
he stepped out. I believe that came through curriculum. I think that was one of the last things that Lindsey Jones did, was we approved the purchase of some.
You got a replacement schedule of, I want to say 2 to 4 new cars or something that we had budgeted for, and it's on their annual cycle. And so part of the reason why is we had 4, I think, is that right? That we were putting the surplus. So that did come through curriculum committee.
Because when I first saw Lindsey Jones on our stuff, I thought, I don't remember that. But now when we were talking about it, I remember it came through curriculum.
Did I understand you say we purchased 2 to 4 new cars?
I can't remember the actual number, but I believe we made purchases of a couple of new cars. Yeah.
I believe it was more than 4, Dr. Houlihan, but I don't remember.
It's okay. I was just curious, when we released 10 vehicles, I just wanted to know what was that replaced with. So it sounds like it went through curriculum.
Yeah, I'm not under the impression that we're short or that we have any issues with service or anything like that. I think it's just a natural replacement schedule.
Building zoning permit information, those were just for FYI, so I don't have any questions on them. I think we need a motion to go into closed session to consult with our attorney in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, which privilege is hereby acknowledged pursuant to NCGS 143-318. Second. All those in favor? Okay, thank you.